What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So recently Riot Feral Pony made a Twitter thread asking the League of Legends community for their ideas on items or item active abilities that they might like to see in the game. And there were a lot of really cool ideas, and Feral Pony explained the pros and cons and gave his thoughts on a lot of them. So I kind of wanted to compile some of our favorites, as well as to bring in some additional sources of items that some Rioters would like to see come into the game. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely leave a like on it or let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for some more videos. So first on our list today comes a few ideas for items from a different Rioter, Riot QA, Blake Sobranis. Blake replied with a bunch of ideas for support items that had really OP active effects, but as a trade-off, no actual stats whatsoever. It's a really interesting line of thought because obviously it's super important for champions to gain stats from items so that they can scale throughout the game, but having a bunch of active items for support specifically that offer no stats would give them some really interesting ways to influence the game or counter certain builds, or just generally introduce a very unique and interesting playstyle into the game that doesn't already exist. Obviously, you'd of course sacrifice durability and other important traits for those actives in the form of your stats, but there could definitely be a way to make it work from a balance perspective. Blake suggested a special shop that only support champions, or I guess players playing in the support role within a game, could access, along with 4 particular active effects that he would like to maybe see on these statless items. The first one is a Thresh Lantern as an active item. So essentially you'd be able to throw out some kind of rope that an ally could click and be pulled into your current position. The second proposed item was for an active effect that works like Tark's original Old Dazzle, which if you're an older player, you're going to remember as being a point and click stun effect that at the time was really powerful because point and click stun effects are really just so reliable, especially when they have a pretty nice range to them. The stun duration and damage in this case were both quite low, which does make sense for an item active, but the targeted nature does make it a little bit hard to avoid, and especially a very reliable crowd control effect. You know, all you need to do is just get close enough to be able to stun an enemy. It sounds like a pretty cool idea for an item that would offer some useful counterplay for supports that are maybe light on crowd control, or perhaps introduce new champions to the support role with the use of allowing them to have some crowd control that doesn't already exist on their kit, though it could actually get really out of hand on champions like maybe Leona or Nautilus that already have a ton of crowd control effects in their kit, as well as a gap closer to let them get in range of their enemies. Blake also suggested 2 toggle items actually, one that would constantly burn a percentage of your max health in return for granting a lot of damage, and one that burned mana for some other effect in a similar way. And these might be pretty awful pickups early on, but as late game support item concepts, they actually hold a lot of promise. And overall, this entire concept of items that give no stats but have an extremely powerful active effect is something that I think is really compelling and could definitely introduce a lot of really crazy and exciting playstyles into the game, and is something that could be worth exploring and experimenting with in the future for sure. Now next up is a great one. We've got an item that both players and Rioters alike, many Rioters actually, have been expressing interest in for a very long time, and that's a League of Legends version of essentially the item Aghanim's Scepter from Dota. So for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with Dota, Aghanim's Scepter is a caster item in the game that adds, a fair amount of stats, but more importantly, upgrades characters in very specific ways. So for most Dota heroes, this takes the form of giving them an upgrade to their ultimate ability by adding power, or introducing a new mechanic, or reducing cooldowns, oftentimes even just completely modifying the way the ultimate ability might work. In fact, 96 of the 115 Dota heroes gain some kind of modified ability when they buy Aghanim's Scepter, although the benefits, of course, vary quite heavily in power from hero to hero. It could work in a similar way for League, giving additional ultimate effects, further reduced cooldowns, or even adding or changing to create new abilities entirely. Although it's a really fun experiment to imagine ways for an item like this to modify each champion's kit, unfortunately it's an item that we probably will never see in the game, despite the fact that it's just damn cool. There are so many existing champions that would need these modifications to be added retroactively, and the entire game balance would probably just be thrown way off the charts as a result of this item. And Riot do also take strong issue with the idea of having a more powerful version of your ultimate locked behind a specific item, because it really makes what is usually considered to be an awesome ability, your ultimate ability, to feel kind of disappointing until you're finally able to buy the item. Aghanim Scepter is probably going to stay as a Dota only item because of this, and really it was only so easy to implement in that game because a version of it kind of existed in Warcraft 3 when the original Dota was created. But of course, there's always a chance that Riot might come up with a similar item concept that affects a certain class of champions, or maybe we'll see a secret shop that offers similar modifications to perhaps some specific characters. Or I guess they've kind of already done that with Ornn actually. Either way, it's a really cool one, and it's one that Rioters would like to see in the game, but realistically, this one is unfortunately probably not going to happen. So our next item actually comes from Riot Ghostcrawler, who mentioned in a tweet to myself actually a couple years ago that Riot Feral Pony had been threatening to create an item that would actually allow players to burn bushes in the game. Our original tweet was about Ghostcrawler teasing Ivern by answering a player's question about a potential roaming support jungler, which is when he first mentioned this idea of a brush burning active item. At first I was super excited since you could take that as him teasing an item due for release, although it's obviously been years without any such thing. Still, it's a really cool item that could open up some very exciting and interesting strategies, and at the time it probably wasn't possible because of just the coding and all sorts of complicated mechanics, but nowadays that kind of stuff is a lot more doable for Riot. There might have to be some kind of like regrowth mechanic or burn limit to stop people going overboard and trolling games or just burning all the bushes on the map, but Riot definitely has developers that could come up with some creative ways to make it work, so I definitely haven't given up on this one just yet. If any Rioters are watching this, definitely take it as a reminder to maybe make this item happen. I think it would be a fun one for sure. Now our next item was suggested by Twitter user LolOnionKnight, who wants to see a tank item with an active effect that pulls enemies around them towards themselves for a couple of seconds. It wouldn't be an instant pull like Victor's updated gravity field, but it would be an effect based on the direction you were moving. So if you were running towards the tank, you'd gain speed due to the gravity pull, but trying to run away would inversely result in a slowing effect. Riot Feral Pony responded to the concept, mentioning that Riot had actually been trying to find a way to add some slides or gravity mechanics into the game, but they had been struggling to find the right gameplay kit for it. I'm definitely with Onion Knight on this one. Turning it into a tank or bruiser item rather than trying to use it as an actual ability could perhaps be a pretty interesting way to make this sort of mechanic work. The question is whether it should maybe affect allies as well. It would become a pretty rewarding item for initiators that would also help when it comes to encouraging your team to engage in a fight, but it would maybe be abused by people looking to troll games. But I mean, people who are going to troll games are going to troll games anyway, right? So maybe it's something that could work out. So next up, we've got another altered version of an item that is originally from Dota, as proposed by Orcanos on Twitter. His idea was based on the Force Staff item, which essentially in Dota allows you to click on an ally to give them a small dash in the direction that they're already facing, which could help you get that last attack to pick up a kill, or maybe it could be used to save an ally as well if they're trying to escape. Riot Feral Pony noted that a lot of really cool moments can happen with the Force Staff, but if they were going to introduce this item, it wouldn't work like the Dota version in League of Legends, because in Dota, there's a mechanic called turning speed, where a character changing direction takes a certain amount of time, whereas in League of Legends, turning your character is just instant. So as a result, in League of Legends, the original version of Force Staff is a lot more unreliable, since at any moment your ally might just suddenly change direction and you'd accidentally push them the wrong way, unlike in Dota where if your ally is going to change direction, you can kind of see it coming and there's a little bit of a delay on it. Orcanos instead proposed a vector cast effect, like something like maybe Victor's E, as a solution where you could choose the location and the direction that the affected units would travel. Now Riot Feral Pony responded saying that this could theoretically work, although it would also allow for multiple pushes, and it would also require a slide sort of movement so that it didn't just function like a stun effect. There isn't currently a way to move a unit without crowd control coded into the game, which is what this sort of slide effect would be, but it's cool to know that it is technically possible and definitely something Riot takes a little bit of interest in exploring one day for the future maybe. So another idea that stood out a little bit was from user named Thud the Minion, who had a concept for actually a reverse item. So essentially by activating it, you would cause any existing slows that are affecting you, or actually speed ups as well, to be reversed. So say you're being chased by an Ezreal with Iceborne Gauntlet who throws a Q at you that normally of course would slow you down quite heavily. By using this reverse mechanic, being hit with that Q would give you instead bonus movement speed, helping you either get away or catch up to Ezreal. Now the opposite would also be true. For example, you could reverse the move speed bonus given by Zillion's Time Warp to one of his allies, essentially turning Zillion's own ability against his team by making it into a substantial slow effect. It's a really neat and interesting idea for an item effect, as well as even an ability too, that would be fairly easy to implement since the code simply needs to check for slows or speed increases, then substitute them for each other if reverse was active. Riot Feral Pony himself commented saying that this idea was awesome, so maybe we'll see something like this in the game in the future. So another item that we've actually talked about in previous videos is the concept for a shield busting item, but it's actually super relevant to this video, so I kind of wanted to just mention it really quick. Riot Meddler mentioned a while ago that Riot had full intention to create an item that would punish shields or specifically destroy shields, but at the time it was unfortunately deprioritized due to changes to the rune system that they wanted to focus on. So Riot Meddler and the team, they're still expecting this one to turn up eventually though. They definitely want to make this item add it into the game in the future. You know, Riot have really wanted to add some new counterplay to shield stacking for quite some time now because shield effects are just becoming so much more prevalent, and sometimes shields just get to be so big that having some sort of counterplay, especially something that's available to everyone, such as in the form of an item, is something that would be very healthy for the balance of the game. So our next item for today is a League of Legends version of the Diablo 3 Oculus Ring, which the item in Diablo 3 essentially places down a bubble on the ground that, if you're standing in it, grants yourself as well as any teammates that are also standing in it a massive damage buff. It kind of works as a way to pull off some really massive damage if your team times and positions it well, but of course it has a huge risk too because you're all grouped together in this sort of bubble and it really sets you up to be quite vulnerable. The idea comes from John Riordan on Twitter, and Riot Feral Pony noted that the cost of not moving in League of Legends as well as in Diablo is quite high, so it would definitely be possible to balance some sort of serious damage on that type of item in the game. They'd have to be pretty careful to telegraph the effect very well to opponents so that they could see what's going on, because being caught with a huge amount of damage out of nowhere is definitely not fun gameplay. Maybe something where there's like a little bit of a delay, like a 2 or 3 second delay before the bubble finally appears to let your teammates stand in it or something like that, but it's something that Feral Pony definitely was quite interested in. Either way, that's actually going to wrap it up for today's list of items. Hope you guys enjoyed all the information as always. If you're curious to see more Rioter opinions on some new features or things they might want to add into the game, definitely recommend checking out our video on champions that Rioters want to create. Either way, let us know in the comment section below which item from today was your favorite and that you might like to see in the game perhaps. Looks like that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.